Hi everyone, welcome back to 100 Days of Nice. Today we're going to be talking all about self-love, and I'm going to share a little bit of history on how my self-love journey started. So if you're interested, stay tuned. The nurturing self-talk of the day was I extend love, mercy, and grace to all parts of myself in all ways. There was two on this day. The second half of that was I solidify and strengthen myself so that I may hold weight and space for others. The I was the integrity practice. I engaged in some self-love practices. So I want to break this part down a little bit more. The extending love, mercy, and grace to all parts of myself in all ways. That inner critic was showing up for me, just like criticizing myself, feeling a little bit of maybe shame or regret about certain things that was coming up. So it was really important for me to practice compassion, and we'll get to that in the next step, through extending that love, mercy, and grace to those parts of myself. The solidifying and strengthening myself so that I may hold weight and space for others, that one goes back like generations. Like a message I learned, and I don't think it was intentional, but a message I learned just as a child observing the women in my family was that it was noble to be a martyr. You were a good woman if you sacrificed yourself for your children, for your spouse. Like you got to the point where you were burnt out or you were run out empty, or you looked a hot mess, but just as long as, your kids were doing good or they were looking good, then everything's okay. So like your needs get put on the back burner because what's more important is who you're responsible for and over. So again, I don't think anyone taught me that on purpose, or that was even what they intended to teach me, but that's what I observed, and that's the message that I walked away from observing generations of women in my family. Socially speaking, there's so many messages that reinforce that approach as well. So when I first started learning about self-love and self-care, it was difficult for me to embrace it because I'm like, wait, isn't that self-centered? Isn't that selfish? But it wasn't until I myself became responsible for other people, I became a mother, I became a therapist, I became a coach, that I realized, nah, you gotta be good. You need to be solid. You need to be strengthened. You need to be grounded so that you can do what you've been called to do. How am I going to guide other people into higher versions of themselves if I'm grasping for air? How am I going to share my resources and be generous and abundant if I have very little to begin with? How am I going to encourage someone when I'm not encouraged myself? So I started realizing, and that's where that affirmation comes in. It is so, so important for us to make sure we are good, because that lets us share from our overflow, that lets us pour into more people more effectively. If I'm grounded and centered, I have so much more patience to extend to my children. If I'm grounded and taken care of, I have some kind of guidance to provide to my coaching clients. If I have sound mental health, I have the cognitive capacity to be able to guide my clinical clients through some of the symptoms that they're experiencing with their mental health. So it's so important for that, and that's where this self-love piece comes in. So the C is the compassion, because I was really combating a lot of criticism at this time, and there was a lot of stress happening, a lot of stress. So in my experience, when the stress is high, criticism tends to come on, and that kind of like self-sabotaging and should've and would've's and all of that stuff comes to the surface. So what I recognized, that broke little girl part of me, one of my younger selves, came back up to the surface amidst the stress. So what I needed to do was extend compassion. So here's a statement I wrote in my journal that day. I have compassion for the broke little girl that resurrected amidst all this stress. I know you are doing your best to survive. But listen, we are not in survival mode. We are in building mode. And to build, we need creativity, joy, faith, and vision for the desirable. And so that was one way that I practiced compassion for that part of myself that felt like, oh my God, we gotta scrap, we gotta try to survive. There was very much entrenched in that scarcity mindset amidst all the stress. That's part of what came back up. So I was able to acknowledge that, and I was able to say, I see you, I feel you, I know you're trying to help out, but this is a different space and time. We're not where we were back then. We're actually good right now. Like, our basic needs are met, and now we're building. And this is what we need to build. And so I was able to have compassion for that part of myself, and then ground and center myself in the part of myself that I know is really going to get the job done. And that's the part of myself that is full of joy, faith, vision for what I actually want, creativity, etc., etc. E, the emotional intelligence. After that process, I was able to feel peace, and I was able to also feel comforted. So the piece that I want to share with you all, one of the things that I did, you don't have to do it, but I'm just sharing for me, it was several years ago. I kind of did like a self-love ceremony for myself, and I committed things to myself. So I, as you could see, love jewelry. So many years ago, I bought myself this ring. And when I got this ring, I kind of allowed the ring to symbolize things. So this ring, for me, it symbolizes commitment to self-love. And that's what we were talking about earlier with the nurturing self-talk. So I vowed to myself to extend love, mercy, and grace to all parts of myself in all ways. There's no reason that I need to be the most critical on myself, especially when I don't treat anyone else in my life in that way. And so whenever I do see this ring, I remind myself of that commitment I made to myself, that I am going to treat myself well, that I am going to love on myself, that I'm going to take care of myself, that I'm going to make myself a priority so that I can fulfill the visions and the purposes that I feel have been planted in my life. So this is something that you can do. It doesn't have to be a ring. Maybe it could just be like a trinket that you have on your desk, or a frame that you put on your wall, or maybe it could be a necklace, or it could be anything. It doesn't have to be physical, but I do like having some kind of physical reminder, because sometimes we forget. So we need that continuous physical reminder, like, this is what I'm vowing to do. This is what I am committed to. So if any of you have ever done some kind of vow to yourself to take care of yourself the same way that you take care of others, share in the comments. What have you done? What was that thing for you? Was it a ring? Was it something else? What have your self-love rituals been? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.